Last class we stopped on page 386. All right? And we had the story of Ayub on page 385, which I think I read from my notes, and you didn't have that particular page, right? Page 385. And the story completed on page 386. So now everybody should have a copy of page 385 along with 386. All right? And just to follow through the notes, do you think we should read through the 385? Would you like that, or you just want to continue on page 386? Continue? All right, so, all right, from 385, yeah. So the story of Ayub alayhi salam, we did complete on page 385-86. So inshallah, if you want, you can read through the notes of page 385, 386, and you'll see the end of that note on Ayub alayhi salam. All right, tonight inshallah, we will look at Zul Kifl alayhi salam, whom was also mentioned to be a prophet of Allah. According to some commentators as well, they say he was just a righteous or pious person. But according to us and according to most of the commentators that we also read, he's mentioned to be amongst those prophets. So the Holy Quran states about Zul Kifl, and it mentions, and Ishmael and Idris and Zul Kifl, all of them were patient ones, and we admitted them into our mercy. Indeed, they were the righteous. Surah Anbiya, Surah 21, verses 84 to 85. It mentions this story and it gives indication to Zul Kifl. He, Zul Kifl, is also known as Hizkeel. I didn't mark it there, but his name is, he's also known as Hizkeel, or mentioned otherwise as Ezikel. Right? Ezikel. Right? Hizkeel or Ezikel, page 386. Zul Kifl came just and around the same time of Ilyasa. Ilyas, Prophet Ilyas from Banu Israel. Alright? He was one of those whom succeeded in the inheritance of Ilyasa. Zul Kifl was one of those who succeeded the inheritance of prophethood, or the handing over of the authority after Ilyasa alayhi salam. He and his story was very interesting. When Ilyas grew old, when he grew old, he called his congregation and his people together, and he mentions, I am looking for such and such a quality in a particular person. Who possessed this? And what are these qualities? A person who would wake the entire night in ibadat. A person who would fast the entire day continuously for day in, day out. So he does not miss a day in fasting, and he continues to make ibadat in the night. And he should also possess the quality that anyone approaches him at no point in time should he ever become angry. So he is looking for a successor from such an individual who will possess these qualities. Now this is a very difficult position to be placed in, because Ilyas alayhi salam, or Ilyasa, he made a request for a man that will possess such a level of devotion, such a level of consistency in his life that is very difficult and rare to find. Who would you find fasting continuously, day in, day out? Who would wake the whole night in ibadat, and then such a person will never get vexed. So everybody in the gathering, after this proclamation and this request was made, this is the requirements for this job. This is what is needed for the job. Not a BA degree, no particular other criterion except this. Everybody remain quiet except Zul Kifl. He says, indeed, I think I possess these qualities. So, Ilyasa, he says, he could really be talking the truth. I can't believe this. After some time, he allowed it to go by, and again he made the same calling to his people and called them and said the same questions and the same requirements, that who possess these qualities? Fasting consistently every day, waking every night, and who will not get angry. And again, Zul Kifl said, I am the one who possesses such quality. Of course, before he made such a proclamation, it was guided upon by him to make such questioning. In other words, he did not give the idea of such questionings on his own. It was by the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he what? Asked these questions. That he asked and looked for the qualities like this, and this person would be the one to succeed you. And so it was that he was Zul Kifl. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his successorship to Ilyasa, he was such a devoted servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the shayateen and shaitan made a request from his shayateen, from his younger associates, saying to them, you go to him, Zul Kifl, and stop him from what he is doing. Stop him and try and prevent him from his total way of devotion to Allah. Distract him from it. Try and get him to stop it. All of the minor shayateen, it says, who, me? Not me. We cannot do battle, we cannot confront him. We do not have the capability to deal with Zul Kifl. So he says, all right, well then left to me. If the rest of you cannot do the job, then Shaitan himself takes it upon his mantle to go and what? Distract and distort Zul Kifl from his job of his total line of devotion and ibadat. So he disguised himself as an old man. He disguised himself as an old man, and he went knocking on the door of Zul Kifl and approached him. He opened the door. He says, I am in need of your help. I'm a very old man, a very frustrated old man that is being oppressed. A very frustrated old man that is being oppressed. And I need your help. He says, all right, come in inside, have a seat. So he started now, this old man, started to give his kalam and his speech and all the people and all the wrongs that is being done to him. And he continuously keep on talking and talking and talking until the night and the period of time for rest is over. So all the time that Zul Kifl appoints for himself for rest is over. So he says, you know what, old man, you come to my court tomorrow. You come to my assembly tomorrow and I'll make a decision upon your people. So tomorrow, the next day came, the court came, Zul Kifl waited on this old man. One day passed, he did not show up. And next day passed, he did not show up. Again now, he came the next morning, knocking at the door again. So he said, he opened the door. Who it is? It's the old man who is in need of your help. He says, what is the condition now? He says, I told you to come to my court in the morning and I would have dealt with it 2 days ago. Why did you come? He says, well, my enemies, when they heard of your making a decision in my favor, they decided to prevent me from coming in your assembly to meet you. They decided to prevent me from coming, and I was fearful of my life, so I don't want to come. Zul Kifl now finds himself in what? 2 days, he comes now. He says, anyway, the old man started to what? Talk again and give his whole plight and story until the entire rest period finished again. So 2 times for that particular successive time now, he did what? Get no rest. So the next day, he told his family, listen, anyone come knocking at my door, don't let them come to me. I'm not entertaining anyone. Because missing 2 nights of rest would what? Depriving of his consistency in what? His whole night of ibadat, his whole day of fasting, everything will what? Be disrupted. So when the man came, as he knocked, the family came out, says, listen, he will not see you now. He says, come and meet me in the court. So the old man saw a way of getting into the house, into the kingdom, like the palace or whatever he had, climbed through and came inside, and went to the bedroom and knocked on the door. While he was resting, he says, so he came out, he opened the door. It's you again. What is the problem this time? He says, this can only be one thing. This can only mean one thing. Are you man's enemy? Are you Iblis? Are you that person whom Allah has cursed? And then he says, indeed, I am. And I have tried successively to make you angry and to destroy you from your duties to Allah, and I have failed. And I have failed. So he made all the effort to distract him, and Zul Kifl, he recognized this was Iblis. This was Shaitan. This is the work of Shaitan. And he pinned him out and recognized his threat against his ibadat. Now this is just one of the prophets of Allah who became a successor to Ilyasa and benefited with his consistency in ibadat and fulfilled the criteria and was also able to distinguish the evil and the tricks of Shaitan. But what was the power? And that is the important part of it. In all of us, this is our strength, ibadat. Our strength is ibadat and worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is where we will find success. This is what is going to safeguard us from those things that will destroy us. So if we want strength, we may not be able to understand and see all of the tricks of Shaitan, but there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that tells us when a person makes that effort upon his ibadat and he fulfill all of the faraid, all of the farz, all of the obligations upon him in Islam, and after fulfilling these obligations, his salat, his fasting, if he has the means, he performs his hajj and he pays his zakat, he fulfill all of these faraid and farz in Islam, and then he goes on to fulfill the sunnah and the nawafil acts and those optional acts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes in a state that he becomes the beloved of Allah. He becomes the beloved of Allah. And when such a person now is in such a state, it is mentioned in the hadith, it says that his eyes will only see those things that Allah wants him to see. His ears will only hear those things that Allah wants him to hear. His hands will only touch those things that Allah wants it to go and touch with that which is pure. and his feet will only walk upon that which is pure and what is straight. And when such a servant reaches to me in such a state, then whenever he asks of me, I am in no other position but to what? Grant him whatever he desires. And he seeks my protection, I am in no other position but to what? Grant him what? Protection. And he has now become my mahbub, beloved. This is a state of what? Consistency in ibadat. This is the benefit of ibadat. This is when our worship becomes fulfilled in its entirety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes that protection for us. It makes for us an opportunity to be safeguarded from shaitan. This is our strength. The hadith of Rasulullah proves this. This particular story of Zul Kifl tells of the value and the importance of ibadat. It tells of the importance of ibadat. And when ibadat is devoid in our life, we find ourselves being tempted from many other things and everything else. But when we become so engrossed in the ibadat and worship of Allah, all our shortcomings, one, they are forgiven. Two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He increases upon us guidance, His love, His rahmat, His mercy, His rizq, His sustenance. All of this becomes easy for us. Everything becomes easy for us when we adopt the practice of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this story, and in the light of this story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us a wonderful opportunity to see in part of our iman, where when we look at the life and our beliefs in the prophets, that in his life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed a life of devotion and ibadat and the value of it. And if we ourselves adopt this, if we ourselves adopt just a portion, at least just a portion. One person came to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he mentions, O Messenger of Allah, if I were to fulfill the fara'id, the faraz, just the basic principles of this deen, would I enter into Jannah? Bala, the Rasul replied, certainly, this is your gateway to Jannah. If he is just constant upon these 5 things that are fara'id, that is farad upon you, these fara'id, then definitely Jannah and paradise is yours. Consistency is part of our deen. Istiqamah, steadfastness. The ayats of the Quran mentions the importance of istiqamah and steadfastness, and this is a quality that was mentioned here for us to benefit from, istiqamah and steadfastness. Sometimes we do something, or sometimes we adopt the practice of doing many things, and we want to fulfill everything one time, but after a while we get tired of it. We cannot fulfill any more of it. So we what? Back down or we boil on. We go down to the extent, as we say, you know, we fill the pot like a pot of bhaji, and when it gets steamed up, what happens? It boils down and it comes to what? A small amount. And sometimes this is the way we are. We are full and energetic and we want to do everything, but after a while it steams up and it boils down. But consistency, whether it be one good deed or one good practice, continuously be at it, and this is going to benefit us. You know, it is, I know I said I'll mention this particular story about Urwa bin Zubair, and in relation to this particular consistency, you know, Urwa bin Zubair is one of those Taba'een whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a great ni'mat and a great favor for us, this ummah. And such a favor and such an acknowledgement that we ourselves should try to even get ourselves emulating his practice, and also to learn and teach our children about Urwa bin Zubair. Urwa bin Zubair, he was such a follower in this deen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has elevated him in the books amongst the Hayat bin Tabi'in, amongst the stories of those Tabi'in and followers after the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He, in his youthful age, many of his what you call student friends or colleagues. They were sitting around the Yemeni corner in Kaaba, at the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the claim came amongst them, you know, when we are young boys talking, they mention sometimes what you want to be when you grow up. Some people say, well, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be whatever it is, but they want to be the best. So this was the challenge amongst 4 young boys, 3 of whom were brothers, and one of them, other friend amongst the brothers. So they stood up one day by the Kaaba and they started to give. Zubair, elder brother, he said, I want to become a ruler of this particular part, Hijaz. I want to become, the next brother, I want to become a ruler of this particular state. The other friend, Abdul Malik, he says, I want to become the ruler of the entire area. Not just like we have a counselor for this area, but he said, I want to become the president or the ruler of the entire state. Unlike the rest of you. So it came down to the end that they asked, well, you, Abdullah ibn Zubair, what is your dream? But he says, before I even start giving my dream, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your intentions and your visions and your dreams. But he says, as for me, amma ana, as regarding me, this is what I want to be. I want to become such a person whom would learn deen and what I learn, practice. So he wants to become an amil of his ilm. He wants to become a person who expresses and lives by what he learns. So they watch, they say, we want to become rulers, we want to become this. What you want to become? Someone who wants to what? Live by the knowledge and practice what he has learned. Now this seems as what? A very modest gesture. Something that is very small. What is big in that? You know, it's just like I read a book and I feel I learn some of these are the morals and the benefits, so I'm good with this and I'll try and inculcate these morals in my life. This does not seem as anything big. It's a modest gesture. As time would pass, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made these boys' dream came to fruition and truth. That his brothers, they inherited the position that they had desired to obtain. Both brothers became leaders in their different states that they wanted. But in such a condition that with leadership, there also are consequences. People are jealous and they will do things to harm and hurt you. So one of the brothers, they died by someone what? Destroying them in that particular way of jealousy, and so he lost his life. And the other brother also had met a similar type of fate. Abdul Malik, the other companion, he inherited successorship and leadership from his father and maintained dominion over the entire land. So he was a very what? Wealthy young man and a highly positioned man. As regarding Urwa bin Zubair, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown in him a quality that is very much that we must emulate in our life. He was at the age of 14 years old, Urwa, when this incident took place. And at the age of 14 years, he was a lover of the Quran. He would read Quran in the day, at least quarter of a juz. And in the night, he would also make salah as well on Quran. So at least half a par of the Quran consistently every day of his life. Every day of his life until he died, this was his condition. Every day he would read Quran. This is the level of istiqamah and steadfastness in his life. Quran every day except for one day. Except for one day. In his whole life, he missed this particular practice from the age of 14 until the age of 71. What was this? His condition was that Aura grew up and he was very wealthy as well. He came from a very noble lineage amongst the righteous ones. His father was also one of those whom Allah had promised through the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who had been granted Jannah while he was alive in this world. Such a state he was in that Aura, when he had all his wealth and possession, when he owned all of these things, his gardens and his fruits and his orchards were the best in all of the gardens that were present there. And when it would grow and its fruits would bear, he would open up the land and tell everyone, come and take as much as you like, eat and drink, and carry as much as you want. And no other fruits and garden were alike his one. None could compare to the sweetness and the beauty like his garden. It was the best. But his friend Abdul Malik from youth invited him over to the kingdom. So he decided to go this one day and visit. And he went with one of his sons. He went there with one of his sons. Going there with one of his sons, like children, like to play and run about and are a little inquisitive, he went to the barn with the horses. And while he was there, one of the horses kicked this young boy, his son, and he died. His son died. Now, if that was in a position like we are in, you go to the airport, your son inquisitive and he running all over the place in the floor, and they see he skate and he fall on the floor. He falls on the floor. What you want to do? Sue them. You want to sue them for this act because they do something? Wrong. We're looking to gain some benefit from this act. But he couldn't. It was his friend. He didn't really care about this. So he decided it is time what? For the janazah, the burial. So the night came and he what? Went and did the burial for his son and placed him in the grave. While coming out of the grave, he got infected while coming out of the grave on one of his legs. Such an infection that causes the entire leg to start to poison. And the poison was such a dangerous thing that his entire body could become what? Contaminated, and he would die in no time. So they consulted the physicians, and not our type of physicians today, but those types of physicians that they had at that time. And they were pitying with him, look, you lost your son, and what's your condition today? What's your condition? And at the same time, your leg is in such a state. And we are sorry to tell you, brother, but you know what? At this point in time, you have to take off that leg. Otherwise, you'll end up in the same fate as your son. The same fate as your son. So they decided now to what? He says, all right, if that is the condition and that is the state now, then so be it. Cut it off. So they brought a set of people now to hold him down, to cut off the leg. He says, what is this? What are you all doing here? What is the reasoning behind this? He says, well, when you are going to face this knife, it's not going to be easy because there's no sort of anesthetics. So we just brought you some drink of alcohol. You take this alcohol, you go in a state of sedation, we hold you down, we cut off your leg. Finish. He says, you know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this alcohol haram, and the harms and the evils of alcohol, if it is not good then, it cannot be good now for me. Because this is haram there, it cannot be good now for me, so I don't want it now. He doesn't want the alcohol even for this condition. He says, if these are the bad of it, I don't want it now, it's not going to benefit to me. And he says, as regarding these people, you don't need to hold me down. You don't need to hold me down. When I am involved in the dhikr of Allah, when I am involved in the tasbih and the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my life is different. You take that chance and cut my leg off that time. So he started his dhikr and his tasbih, and they went ahead and what? Severed the leg. In that condition, he what? Passed off. Because we get a little cut sometime, a little drop of blood, and people faint. And they can't see blood. But imagine what? The whole leg gone. So he what? Passes off. No anesthetic, no type of drugs, not asleep. He gone what? Straight away. He fainted. When he woke up the next day, after they did the necessary thing to save the and stop bleeding and so on, he called upon for his leg. He called for his leg. So they brought his leg, come for him. To their amazement, he take the leg and he starts to rub the leg and pat this leg, and he starts to say, "O leg of mine, in all my life that you are my companion, I never rest my weight on you to walk towards haram. I never did anything haram with you. I never did anything haram with you. And, O leg, out of your condition, I missed what? One night of my ibadat and my Quran with my Creator. For one night in all of 71 years. A condition that he could not even control. And for this one night, he called his leg. For this one night, he called his leg. And it didn't end there. They went on, so he get in a state to travel again. And when he went back to his home, people in the town came and they what? Started to what? Console him and say, "Oh my, what a loss. You lost your son and you lost your leg." He says, "Don't console me and try to make me feel sad. You should be happy. And I am grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Ajib, they became astonished. This man lost his son and he lost his leg, and he's still saying, "Glory be to Allah." He says, "Allah had blessed me with 4 sons. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took one and left me with 3. He took less and leave me with more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had took from me 1 limb, 1 leg. He left me with 2 hands and 1 leg. I am still grateful to Allah. He has left more with me and took less." And he took less. But it only comes with what? Constancy. Istiqamah. For us to deal with the challenges in our life, for us to deal with the situation and the condition of our daily life, if ibadat and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is devoid, then the challenges and the tests and the conditions that are faced before us, it will become different. It will become easy for us to accept from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. It will become easier for us to accept the things that happens to us when Allah is on our side. But when we are living in a state of when we do not depend on Allah, we look at things around us and I am doing this and I am doing that, and when things befall us, then we find ourselves in a hole. We don't know what to do. We are frustrated. And we call upon different things. Better I die now. Better this happen. Why take my son? Why this should happen now? All these different cries and pleas. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we make him part of our life and our devotion consistently, continuously, make the habit of ibadat, our life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring ease and we will see good. Even though people are seeing what? But he real suffering. He real going through difficulty. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings that level of compassion and love in the heart that one will be able to be in a state of tranquility and calm, even though when adversity and hardship and it looks like difficulty comes his way. So his story, and this is just part of his story. In the Hayat al-Tabi'in, in the stories of those Tabi'ins, you read about Urwa bin Zubayr. And you read many of those other companions, not companions, but friends after the Tabi'in, after the Sahabas radiallahu anhum, we read about them, even about the Sahabas, and you see their consistency in ibadat and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zul Kifl, in this story, gives to us an indication of the people of the past and their devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their consistency, and the result of their consistency. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us this understanding as to what is consistency in ibadat and what is the benefit of it, inshallah. Imam Sahib, time up already? Yeah. We're going to 1:30 after that? Okay. So inshallah now we'll go to the Quran. Inshallah we're doing Surah Mulk. And the last verse we stopped on, my indication, I think we stopped on verse 9, where we talk about the verse that says, قَالُوا بَلَا قَدْ جَاءَنَا نَذِيرٌ فَكَذَّبَنَا وَقُلْنَا مَا نَزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا فِي ضَلَالٍ كَبِيرٍ. That those people who will be going towards the fire of hell, they will exclaim, and the people will be saying to them, didn't any warner come to you? And they say, yes. And what is the cause and the condition? What is mentioned is that they are in dalalan kabira. Fi dalalan kabir. They were in major misguidance about the akhirah and the life of the hereafter, and hence they deny the Prophet, and they call the Prophet liars, and they deny the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what did they say? In verse 10 it says, وَقَالُوا لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. They mentioned, لَوْ كُنَّا, if we, نَسْمَعُ, if we had heard, أَوْ نَعْقِلُ, and understand, aqil, intelligence, if we had used our intelligence and understand, مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ, we would not have been in this condition, on a painful plight that we are in today. Fi ashab as-sa'ir. We will not be in this woeful state today and the condition that is before us today. If only we would have listened, we would not have been the inmates of this ashab as-sa'ir, the companions of this blazing fire. And that is a statement from whom? Those companions from the fire of hell. Imagine the state. Imagine the state of the people who deny the words of Allah, who deny everything on Judgment Day, and on the day when they'll be heading towards that fire of hell. If only we hear, and if only we had obeyed and used our intelligence, then what would have been the condition? We would have been saved from this today. We would have been saved from this today. And he continues and mentions, فَاعْتَرَفُوا بِذَنْبِهِمْ فَسُحْقًا لِأَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. So they will admit their sins. They will admit their wrongs. فَاعْتَرَفُوا بِذَنْبِهِمْ. They will admit their wrongs. فَسُحْقًا لِأَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. And what a state of the inmates or the people of the fire of hell. Indeed, it is for them in a state that they are in. And they are distant from everyone else. They are distant from everyone else. They are further away from the obedience of Allah, and now today they are distant away from even earning the rewards of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing to get except ashab as-sa'ir, a blazing fire. A condition that we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from. And to be saved from that condition, it means that we ourselves have to find, and as we mentioned last week, save ourselves from that dalalin kabirin. Fi dalalin kabir, the major misguidance that at times we mentioned last week, that we think of success and we teach our children success in the things of this life, and telling them this is your success, but we never tell them that salah is success. We never tell them that in the life of reading the Quran there is success. In the light of obedience of the Quran there is success. We never teach our children that this is the path of success. Rather, we teach our children that success lies in those things that are only of benefit for this world. That is only of benefit for this world. And that is dalalat. That is dalalan kabira. That is a big misguidance in the eyes of the world today. That they only see success in things that will only benefit them in this life. But in the life of a mu'min, this is what takes place. He says in verse 11, he says, verse 12, sorry, he says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَأَجْرٌ كَبِيرٌ. As regarding certainly those people whom they fear Allah, يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ, they fear their Lord, لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ, for them is forgiveness. وَأَجْرٌ كَبِيرٌ. And it's different from what? Dalalan kabir. Now is what? Ajrun kabir. A great reward. Ajrun kabir, for believing in the ghaib. Who yakhshawna rabbahum bil ghaib. Who fear Allah bil ghaibi, without seeing Him. Without seeing Allah, they have this fear. And such is the level of taqwa, that without seeing Allah, we have fear for Allah. We obey Allah. Such a fear is that a fear that we are looking as though the policeman is around the corner, as though your parent is in the house, so you won't do it now. Not that type of fear. But a fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yakhshawna rabbahum, that they fear their Lord in such a state, that they are living for something better. So therefore obedience, consciousness in their lives to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is much more. Yakhshawna rabbahum, that they fear the Lord bil ghaibi, in regarding the world of the hereafter. The unseen world, the world which is everlasting. Yakhshawna rabbahum bil ghaib. They fear Allah in that world. They fear Allah in respect to that world. And he mentions for them, for those who would take that responsibility of fearing Allah in such a condition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them ajrun kabir, a great reward. A great reward. And he goes on to say, asirru qawlakum aw wajharu bi innahu alimun bi dhati sudur. Do you not know that whether your speech is asirru qawlakum, whether it is secret, or wajharu bi, or whether it is open, innahu alimun bi dhati sudur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what is in your hearts. Allah knows what is within us. He knows what we think. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in our minds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in our hearts, because Allah's knowledge about His creation is to everything that He has created. The animals that move, the creation of every single thing that exists, the plants and everything is within the within the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is within the encompassing wisdom of Allah in the way He makes things function. We ourselves are still grappling in even the way we function. Even the way that we function as human beings, at times it is difficult for us to even differentiate in times what is more important to us. What is more important to us? Sometimes when we think about the words of Allah and we think about the occupation towards our family and the duties towards our family, and we think about our jobs, and sometimes we think about the other things that surround our life, we don't know what to put in priority. We don't know what to put in priority. What is more important? What seems to take the first position in our life? Amongst everything else, what takes priority in our life? And that is, it is firstly us serving Allah. Nothing else has priority, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He examines us, and He examines us better than any machine that has been created to examine any human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is not such machine that said they have made machine to detect when someone is lying. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whom has knowledge about every human being. No machine could do the job as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They cannot detect the condition and the predestination, nor the thinking and the feeling and the position of a person with what to come. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the knowledge of every single human being, of the things that they're going to do from the very next minute, what they're going to do in their life. Every second that goes by, Allah has that knowledge already existing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already predestined and knows the condition of every one of us. No equipment. None of us are capable of in that position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورُ, that He is that one who examines and knows what is in the heart. No one can reach that state. No one can reach the state of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why He is Allah, who is the Rabb, that is deserving of our worship, that is deserving of our total obedience to Him, and our giving up to ourselves. Everything that we think is that we are thinking that to ourselves, I could hide this, or I should do this now, and this is more priority. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us what is priority. I know what is best for you. I know your rizq and I know your sustenance, and you are telling me you would give up my obedience and my worship and give instead that to your job, to your family and everything else, instead of ibadat and worship to me? And I am the one who is aware of your condition better than even you. He is making that clear to us here. بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورُ, I am telling you, I am aware of it. Allah is saying, I am aware of what is in your heart. Give me your ibadat. Give me the worship that is deserving to me, and I will take care of your needs. Allah says, you worship me, and I will give you my sustenance. And He says, مَا يَتَقِ اللَّهِ, whoever fears Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَرَزُقُ مَا يَحْتَسِبُ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him sustenance just in such a condition. لَا يَحْتَسِبُ, he does not even know where his sustenance come from. And He also mentions in the next hadith that says that just like a bird, it will go out in the morning in a state of being hungry, and then it will return with its stomachs filled, and it does not have what? A job waiting for it down the road. It does not know where it's going to get its next meal. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has its rizq and its sustenance written for him. Subhanallah. بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what is in the hearts of each and every one of us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the position of all of us. Then why it is, if it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in this condition and this position, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that has power of all of these things, then what is the game we are really trying to play? You know, what is the game we are really trying to play in life when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already written for us how to live life? How to live life, and it is already written for us. And all is required is obedience. All that is required from us is obedience. And He says, and He supports this and tells us, He says, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ, and last verse we complete, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. Do you know, He says, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ, do you know who is that one who creates things? أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. He says, هُوَ لَطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. It is He who has the knowledge, the intricate knowledge, the knowledge of those things that will take you years and probably your whole life and generations to come to even understand a little about it. Even in the creation of our own being, a child, in the womb of a mother, all of the thousands of years that has gone by, only in our time they really understand the concept of how a child develops in the womb of the mother. He says, the intricate knowledge, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ لَطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has knowledge of those things because He is the creator. He is the creator. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. You know who is the creator? I am the creator. I am the one who has made all of these things. I am the one who is feeding you. I am the one who is nourishing you. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, when you go to work, when you think the brain that you have is what I have blessed you with, all of these faculties come from me, Allah. I am your creator. I made you what you are. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ لَطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. And He is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a state that He is Latif and Khabirun. He knows. He is aware. He is aware of everything, and He is informed about everything. Nothing escapes Allah. Nothing escapes Allah. And when we think about Latif and the condition of this information, imagine, sometimes we have little children and we know that they're involved in little what? Mischief. Little mischief. We know they're involved in some mischief. But what? We overlook it. We know that they're involved in some mischief, but we overlook it. Latiful Khabir. Allah is well informed, we are well informed and we know, but we know that in this stage of their life, this is their condition. This is their condition. Little children will be like this. That's why, sometimes the advice is that big people shouldn't use children to become enemies. Because we say this child do this and this one will stand up for that one, big adult arguing over what? The deeds of the little child. Oh, you're taking part for him and I taking part. But this is what a little child, and we are making decisions over the little child. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, He's Latiful Khabir. We are aware of the condition and the behavior of little children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware, and is aware of our conditions now and in the future. Allah is aware of it. And He says, Latiful Khabir. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroys certain nations, He knows why He destroyed them. He destroyed them because He knows that they will only be of such a state that everything that comes out of them will only be what? Bad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of nations and people that they will change, and Allah knows that they will change. And if they make effort upon it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this here, that if we make effort, we will change, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have mercy, and He will forgive us all our sins. Latiful Khabir. Subhanallah. With the wisdom and the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we stop there today, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide you and me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless each and every one of you. Forgive us for all our shortcomings. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for making the effort to be here today. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.